Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So how do we know that I'm the top martial artist ever possible? Well, to me, it's obvious. To other people, it might be a little less obvious. So let me start with a very clear-cut example. If your wife goes to the store and she buys a little package of sugar for $500, okay, there's no reason to buy it. It's not supposed to cost that much, what have you. And she comes home and says, hey, I bought this thing of sugar. You'll be mad at her, right? You say, okay, with the information given, again, with the information given, that was a stupid decision. Again, with the information given, that was a stupid decision. Let's say somebody follows Pee Wee Herman, right, who decides to be a preacher. And Pee Wee Herman's acting like an idiot the whole time. The person dies, they meet their maker, and the creator says, hey, with the information given, that was a stupid decision. Also, the information has to be articulated. It doesn't have to be heard by everybody. When is anything ever heard by everybody, right? But it has to be articulated past a certain point. For example, if a homeless person starts talking crazy and says he has a vision for society and they're dumb for not listening to him, he's wrong, right? If no one's listening to him. He said, look, you're some crazy homeless person, you're talking crazy, and you think everyone should just do what you say. That's not logical. Now, if a brain surgeon's son makes a top martial arts challenge for 13 years and counting, and at some points he offers millions of dollars if he's compensated, $60,000 if he's not, $50 just to show, and depending on how significant the person is, okay, so someone's famous, you might give him $5,000 just to show, for example, just to show. Very few martial artists with skill are so rich that that's not a tempting argument. Now, just give me an offer. Then the logical assumption is if nobody can beat him and he spent years getting the message out, that he's gone beyond other people. Now, if you listen to someone else after that, it's like being that female going to the store and buying that little package of sugar for $500. So what are you thinking? Not only are you wrong, it's like, what the hell are you thinking? What the hell? What the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you? The person is a brain surgeon's son. This is not brain surgery. Brain surgeon came here, penniless, worked his way up, and became a brain surgeon. Not some privileged white guy with the best of everything in a system for him, by him, speaking his first language. Someone speaking like English is like a third or fourth language. Obviously, that person is to be taken more seriously, right? The person who's the son of that person with a top martial arts challenge, that he's beat every challenger in regards to the challenge. I beat everyone challenger. I'm going to be taken more seriously than anybody on this planet. And to not see it that way, again, it's like being that female going to the store and buying that package of sugar for $500. It is infuriating. This is why long ago, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, they said it was legal to beat their wives with a stick as long as it was no bigger than the thumb or whatever. In popular culture, is a stereotype. I think someone was saying it was actually not true. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard when I was younger that it was. Okay? That's why in some cultures you're allowed to beat your wife. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. What I'm saying is that some decisions are so dumb and someone should get the hell beat out of them for them. Now, for those of you who don't agree, what happens if you send someone to prison? Quite often they get beat up, right? The judge doesn't say, wait, you might get beat up in prison. They still send them to prison because they believe some decisions are so dumb that people deserve to get locked up where they're extremely likely to get beaten up. And by the time they're done being locked up, they may as well have been beaten up because the mental stress of the possibility will have haunted them every day, driven them insane. Whether they become a super tough guy or not, it'll have pushed their mind into a certain place. So now let's talk about the frontal lobe briefly. The frontal lobe is an interesting part of the body. It is the largest of the four lobes of the cerebral cortex. But that's not so important. I don't expect you to remember that. Heck, I don't remember that half the time, at least. What is important is that in the frontal lobe you have decision making, you have movements, right? Movement, meaning mind is in the word mental. Okay, sexual behavior. It affects emotions, it affects critical thinking, obviously, because of decision making, deductive reasoning, what have you. And if we take the case of Fat Bastard from Austin Powers back in the day, so this big fat guy, if he's to say that he's a brilliant person, you should take him seriously and not the top martial artist ever possible, he'd be an idiot, right? He doesn't even have the judgment to try to get in shape. It affects his health, it affects his ability to get a mate, his ability to be proud of himself, how his family treats him, how society treats him. He says, hey, that doesn't matter. All that matters is being an overweight idiot. You see what I'm saying? So we can see already the expression of his life decision, which is an expression of the frontal lobe of the brain in general, what have you. The person has committed to being like Tweedledee, Tweedledum, propeller hats. Committed to being like that guy who's like an egg in the cartoon sitting on a wall. Humpty Dumpty or whatever the hell that guy's name is. He committed to being an idiot. Then you get a gold digger, right? She can't strike very well. She can't move very well. Okay? She committed to being just another pretty face, following the crowd. If in Nazi Germany, she would have been a Nazi. Communist Russia, she would have been a communist. You name it. Just a fair weather idiot. Not a lot of brain power. Not a lot of what? Brain power. Pow, 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 ear, power. I know they're going to change my voice to try to make it sound corny because they're immature nerds. They're boarding school buttercrumbs. They're brutes. They're lunatics. They're cultists. Oh yeah, Crowley, I'm sure he was a genius, right? Stupid. You follow those types? You're like that chick at the store buying the little packet of sugar for $500. What the hell were you thinking? What the hell are you thinking? So as the anger is directed through the martial arts strike, what I found is a bunch of geeks and their allies were like, hey, we got to stop this guy because he's clearly communicating that he's far more intelligent and important than the rest of us. So persecute him. Cambridge, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, all these people in secret societies with their fancy degrees, they came to that conclusion. Scientists, social scientists, for example, psychologists, doctors, they joined these groups that said, hey, if people see this argument expressed, they're going to know better than they do. Now, if somebody walks up behind you with a shotgun and blows your head off, well, you have proven several things, including what you don't know can hurt you. So whether or not you know you're supposed to follow me, the way, the truth, and the life, it can hurt you, right? If you don't follow me, it's going to cost you everything. You'll be like that chick buying this thing of sugar for $500. No refunds in that case. Without knowing it's a bad price to pay. And the worms in society, in the spirit that you share with them that led you astray, will have played a part in bringing you down. That's why in Revelation 18 it says, come out of her. It doesn't say, hey, if you don't know better, you can go ahead and stay in her. It doesn't say that. It says, come out of her so you won't share in her sins. And we see in Proverbs that rebellion is a huge sin. Don't rebel against God and the King. Whether or not you know that that's what you're doing, you will be punished for doing that. So it's every church's, mosques, and synagogues' job to spread the message, and the essence of the message is to obey God through me, the most important thing. You could tell them, hey, don't rob all day. You could tell them, hey, you should pray all day. But if you don't tell them to obey God through me, it'll be like you have walked up behind them and blew their head off with a shotgun and say, that's okay, because they didn't know that, so they must not actually be hurt. I must be dreaming or something, which is retarded. So now let's look at martial arts, right? Again. So you have a bunch of guys from different philosophies. You got Buddhist gentlemen, you have Shinto gentlemen, you have atheists. Bruce Lee was an agnostic, what have you. And they're thinking very hard within the boundaries of their belief system. Because what you believe affects your thinking. And they're trying to forge martial arts. They're breeding with that thinking, epigenetics. They're moving. They're coming up with different techniques, what have you. And so and also there's people who are about my height and weight and shape, give or take, who do their martial arts. It's not like they're all short or they're all tall and skinny and uncoordinated. And they're refining their brain for generations, not just one generation, for generations. But I could beat every last one of them because I know best. Me, the way, the truth. Not a bunch of people who are too arrogant to accept that I am the master at life. But me. Now, if I say 1 + 1 = 2 in a way you think is cocky, does that change the fact? No. If I say it in the way that it should be said and you think it's cocky, does it change the fact? No. Not only are you wrong, and it actually does equal 2, but you're wrong to think that I'm cocky when I'm saying it in the way that it should be said. That's why the Bible says humility is the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is humility. Not acting like Hoggle from the Labyrinth or Eeyore from Winnie the cartoon. Humility is the fear of the Lord. Stupidity is fearing these betas in the governing class more than God. Ever heard the saying, time is money? Life is short and time is money. The Bible says you can't serve God and money. When you won't obey God because you want more time, it's nearly identical, if not identical, to not wanting to obey God because you want more money, because time is money. Now work the angles on that if you think it's not that simple. What are your families when they're in the spirit of rebellion? Proverbs 1, the first thing in the Bible can be seen as Proverbs 1, not just Genesis 1 or John 1. It can also be seen as Proverbs 1. Proverbs are to understand the other books in the Bible. Proverbs 1, verse 19. Such are the paths of those who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of all who get them. Whether or not you know you're going after ill-gotten gain, it takes away your life. So if you're a Muslim, Christian, a Jew, if you're a spiritual witch who thinks of themselves as a Christian, which is quite a strange thing to think, you're supposed to agree with Proverbs 1, verse 19. It takes away the life, the spiritual life, right? The way, the truth, and life takes away the spiritual life of all who get ill-gotten gain. Now, do you have to turn into a frog before you realize that you're on the wrong path? What do you call somebody who's willing to cheat God as long as they don't turn into a frog? A selfish worm. We call a family that's willing to cheat God as long as they don't turn into frogs for the rest of their lives. A selfish worm. They turn into something worse than a frog, but because they don't look like a frog, they find it acceptable. That's because they're dumb. That's because their brain is garbage. That's because they are not human. They're inhuman. They don't have their humanity intact. They've committed to what is evil and vile and disgusting. Therefore, they're inhuman. They should be living in a dog yard, in a kennel, in a dog house. They should be eaten out of a dog bowl because they're not a human being. Unfortunately for them, their brain works enough for them to be held accountable for their lack of humanity. And when they try to argue that their martial arts or religion or lifestyle is greater than universal pinpointed moral precision, which is expressed only through me at this time. And after my flesh dies, that's it. The human race will be failed. There'll be no way for them to be moral. Because there'll be nothing for them to build on that's worth building on. The foundation will be cheating me out of my right to lead after 300,000 plus years of human existence. They will no longer be the human race, though. They will be the should have known better race of dogs, of worms, of vampires, of demons. You should have known better. Why are you reproducing? Why are you having kids in a world where kids get molested, they get hooked to a machine, and then some rich, privileged, blood money-filled monster says, well, I have a privileged position that means I can protect my kids because you are the main vampire of them all, so to speak, if for nothing else. That's called being a motherfucking bitch. And what kind of a slut wants to have a kid with a demonic motherfucking bitch?